Andrew Lowe's from AzureTracks.com here, and with me today I have Ryan McKay. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do and who you are?
Hi there, I'm Ryan McKay. I'm a cloud implementer in the Office 365 and Azure space. I work primarily in Office 365 right now, but have done a lot of work in Azure in the compute storage space in previous roles. I have a online blog called the Microsoft Cloud Quick Fix, and where Andrew and I have connected is in previous projects, and two guys working in the IT space for over 20 years. We've got a lot of common experiences, and we just chat sometimes very long, and we kind of picked around this wonderful idea from Andrew that, hey, we should put together something that's informative for people out there, to explain some of our experiences and to speak about some of the really awesome technologies that are available in the Microsoft Cloud space.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so we've had a couple really cool opportunities to work together in the last while. And we've been able to help a number of clients kind of move from kind of an on-premises into hybrid or even full cloud situations, and it's really been very empowering for a lot of businesses, especially this last while with all of this remote working, remote work versus forced working from home. Maybe two different things, depending on the context of the conversation, for sure. But I think we've seen a lot of clients that have kind of a deep confusion between Active Directories, and I call it very certainly high-level Active Directories, because I think as the two recurring words, we have Windows Server Active Directory for on-premises, which is based, of course, out of Windows Server. And that can live, just to keep things not confusing, in a tenant in Azure or another cloud provider. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's on premises, but it means it's a local domain. So a non-routable domain, not a .com, not a .net or .ca, whatever. But then we also have Azure Active Directory, and it's kind of cool, but it's also really confusing if you're trying to just identify it. What is it? It's Active Directory. Well, isn't it the same darn thing? It is. Yeah. We talked about this just before we recorded, but it's the same, but yet it's vastly different. So yeah. When we think about Windows Server Active Directory, what is it? It's an identity, credential store. It's on premises. It's based on Windows Server. There's lots of various properties. It integrates with other on-premises technologies, Exchange, SQL, even certificates. Lots of different facets to it. But when we think about Azure Active Directory, certainly we can synchronize identities, and we can kind of focus on that later on. But we have this Azure Active Directory, and that allows us to integrate with what other kinds of technologies can we integrate with Azure AD?
Well, it is the basis of all Microsoft cloud solutions, especially in Office 365. It is necessary in order to offer the services that we have available to us in Office 365, Exchange Online, permissioning, security groups, and all that. So, and the other key way of looking at it is right now it's distinct but connected, right? Originally, you get Azure Active Directory would be a subset of the attributes, from the on-prem directory. It was synced up using the tool, which is now known today as Azure AD Connect. It had, previous names, I think 3, And you kind of, you kind of built that. That's how long Andrew and I have been involved in this. Like, we remember the previous names of the sync tools, and I'm now on.
DirSync is deprecated now?
Well, I mean, at some clients it might not be, but
true enough.
That's why we're in business. But it really is the Azure Active Directory and the action of taking that subset of attributes from the on-prem Active Directory and replicating them up is really what it allows, or what forms the foundation of the services that are being offered in Office 365. You of course can extend that, because of course Office 365 is built on Azure Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory in and of itself is Azure. So in some other roles that I've had, I've seen like on-prem security groups being used to control access to resources within Azure itself. Like who has capabilities to provision servers, this, that, and the other in Azure. So really, again, it forms that basis. And then, although those items are interconnected, they're also very much separate, because as I alluded to earlier, some of the attributes within the on-prem Active Directory do not get replicated up to Azure Active Directory, but also there's attributes within Azure Active Directory that don't get replicated back, that are specific in that space.
So what if we want to do an implementation of cloud only? So let me throw a scenario kind of out there. So let's say there's no on-premises equipment. We're just kind of working in cloud vapors. We've got exactly floating around. So how do you manage that identity in the Microsoft 365 realm then? What would your scenario be? Where would you provision your users to?
Yeah, and in that case, you would be provisioning users, groups, security groups, distribution lists, any of that stuff actually gets provisioned within Azure Active Directory itself. And in fact, even in a hybrid scenario, you can have identities that exist only within Azure Active Directory, or to be honest, you can have identities which only exist in on-prem Active Directory. Again, those capabilities, especially from on-prem up to Azure Active Directory, is controlled or can be controlled using AD Connect. Out of the box, it wants to sync everything. But generally speaking, I have rarely seen an entire Active Directory and all the users and whatnot be synced up to Azure Active Directory.
Oh, well, that's where we differ. I have gone into clients doing audits, and I have seen the full AD from on-premises synchronized. I think you have too, if you look back. And one of the things that I think we both often recommend is using a specific configuration. Let's save that for another chat.
Sounds good.
But I think for today, we wanted to lay out a little bit about what is Windows Server Active Directory. Is it different than Azure Active Directory? Where do they cross over? How does it meet Microsoft 365 for things like Exchange and Teams, Yammer, OneDrive? So there's lots of identity crossover. Are they the same? No, they're a little bit different. One is for on-premises. One is for managing your Azure-based tenant with your Microsoft 365-based tenant. And there is some crossover. We'll talk about that, I think, next time. But I think we've added a little bit of clarity around it. And, you can have two separate houses, really, to keep your credential stores in, one for on-premise, one for cloud. You can link them together. You can replicate kind of up. You can replicate changes down, but not everything gets included, not all of the different fields. So there is a little bit of, as I like to say, jiggery-pokery involved in making everything work. Yeah. And I think businesses are going to, they're becoming more educated, and they're going to start asking more demanding questions. Why can't I access product X when I'm replicating these properties out of our identities? And I think that those are really good questions. maybe we can address those in yet another episode.
Absolutely, and and maybe in closing, we just kind of say is that this is the Azure Active Directory and the connectivity between the on-prem Active Directory, the Windows Active Directory, as you call it. It's a symbiotic relationship. They exist with one another. There's a lot of confusion that I've run into in my travels. That hey, well, we moved to the cloud. We have this Azure Active Directory. Can we start shutting down domain controllers on premises and no longer keep our on-prem Active Directory? And the short answer to that is no. And I think again, to your point, Andrew, that's maybe a longer conversation in the future. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some specific technologies that address moving to a cloud provisioning state and reducing or removing on-premises domain controllers and other server technology that you may want to spin down on premises.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some cool stuff out there. Cloud provisioning is really exploding. And of course, we know Ignite the last couple of days and, another day to come still. No, we're still on the clock for Ignite. We're just squeezing this into our schedules this evening. But I think, there's some really cool stuff coming out of Ignite this year, just as we were all expecting. And I can't wait to talk about all these new topics with you again. So thanks for chatting with me tonight, Ryan. I really appreciate your time. And what's your website again? Where can we find your blog?
Oh, I'm just setting that up, so you're going to want to pause recording for that. But
we don't
pause. This is raw, complete with bloopers. We're at www.mscqf, so Microsoft Cloud MSCQF, quickfix.com. And we're, of course, I'm available on LinkedIn and YouTube, other platforms to be determined in the future.
Yeah. So my platform is azuretracks.com. And you can find me using at azuretracks.com on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So awesome. Look us both up. We'll put some details along with our recording kind of in line with some text for all of our watchers. And thanks again for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you again. Take care. Thanks, Andrew.